Welcome to Straight Shot Politics. Each episode will bring you in-depth discussion with experts, community leaders, and analysts who will share their insights, experiences, and predictions. From local elections to global diplomacy, we'll provide you with the tools and perspectives you'll need to navigate today's real-world landscape.
Welcome to Straight Shot Politics. I'm Lisa Breedlove Chafee. Today I am talking with the top law enforcement officer of Ohio, Attorney General Dave Yost, who began his public service career as Delaware County Auditor, later winning an election as that county's prosecutor from 2011 through 2018. He served as Ohio's Auditor of State, and in January 2019 began his first term as Attorney General of Ohio. He was reelected as Ohio's 51st Attorney General on November 8, 2022, receiving more votes than any other Attorney General in the state's history. And just a fun fact about Attorney General Yost, he is an accomplished musician and plays in a band. And thank you for being here, Attorney General. I've had the pleasure of listening to your performances, and it seems like you have a tremendous amount of fun when you're up there playing.
I don't know that the music's very good, but we have a great time. It's good to be with you today, Lisa.
We really appreciate you taking the time out of your busy schedule. So I have quite a few questions for you, so let's just get started. One big topic that I'm hearing amongst many of my conservative friends is, what are we going to do about this civil war we seem to have within the Republican Party here in Ohio?
Well, I think we need to do two things. One is we need to listen to each other because, as my mom used to tell me, nobody's right all the time. And it's just possible that the people on the other side, or wherever you happen to be, might have a point you ought to listen to. But the second thing we need to talk about, that we need to do about this civil war, is we just need to fight it. Look, sometimes families have arguments and have those arguments from time to time. Principles matter, ideas matter, and candidly, we're in a different time in history. This is not the 1980s anymore. And the optimism of a Ronald Reagan, while certainly a great personality trait, is a little bit plays a little bit differently today in the world that we're living in.
That is true. We are in very different times, and as of right now, we are just a couple of days away from our March 19th primary election, and the biggest race in that is for U.S. Senate. So we have Matt Dolan, Bernie Moreno, and Frank LaRose running against each other. And it's really disheartening, the amount of negativity that's been generated out of this campaign. And I wish we could get Republicans to realize it's not just about one person, it's about the party. So you're right, we have to listen to each other. Along those lines with the Republican Civil War, so to speak, in the State House, we have the Blue 22. What are your thoughts on that situation? What do you think those 22 individuals had in mind when they sided with the Democrats?
Well, you'd have to ask them, and the opinion of a statewide elected official is irrelevant to the Republican caucus in the House of Representatives. I mean, they get to figure out their own stuff as a coordinate and co-equal branch of government. I will say I'm uncomfortable with the idea that we have Democrats deciding who the speaker is going to be when we have a supermajority. Earlier, to point number one about the Civil War, we need to listen to each other. And goodness gracious, if we can't get together and pick a Republican from among Republicans without resorting to the Democrats to do it, I wonder a little bit about our capacity to to govern. We need to listen to each other, and I hope that whatever happens on Tuesday, when we get down to picking the next speaker in January of 2025, it's my hope that my Republican brothers and sisters are able to come together, have the fight and argument that they need to have, but settle on a candidate.
I agree wholeheartedly. And whoever wins Tuesday, that's who we need to support, whether you like that person or not, because it's about the party and it's about what's best for our country.
Absolutely.
Another hot topic amongst a lot of us since last November with the initiatives put on the ballot for abortion, we know that many, many people were brought in from out of state to collect signatures on those petitions. And it seems like the Democrats are trying to run Ohio via constitutional amendments. How can we stop this from happening?
Well, the end of the day is you've got to win elections. And this is going to be a little controversial in some quarters, but we've gotten used to running elections by basically get out the vote efforts. We find our voters and get them to the polls, which we absolutely have to do. But we've gotten to the point where we rely on that, and we're not really persuading anybody anymore. We have to break out of our trenches here and begin a dialogue with people who are non-aligned. The non-aligned people, the folks that aren't part of either party, now kind of hold the balance of power. And as we saw, just getting your people to the polls isn't enough to necessarily win an election. It's important that you persuade people of the virtue and logic and morality of your ideas, so they go, yeah, I'm for that. And just getting the already convinced to the polls is not enough particularly when we get into an election where it's not about a Republican or a Democrat label on the ballot, but they're asking a question.
Right. It's pretty astounding. I believe the last numbers were we have over 8 million people here in Ohio. Only half of those are registered voters, and even less than half of that actually vote. That's pretty scary.
Well, there's certainly a lot of people who don't vote. I would say that neither party has given a lot of those people a reason to vote. And it's important we can look to Ron DeSantis in Florida. That was a perennially purple state. He eked out his first gubernatorial win. And as soon as he got into office, he started going out and working his political operations, started doing voter registration, identifying people and getting them registered to vote, and then staying in contact with them. That's super important to do. We've got to give people a reason to want to be with us, and we've got to make them feel welcome. They're not going to just wake up one day and say, oh, you know what? I think those Republican folks seem like they're making a lot of sense. I'm going to vote with them. It's important for us to take the lead and to be advocates.
Agreed. We need to build those bridges with our community, for sure. So,
at least, so that's one of the things I just want to give you a shout out and the Council of Republican Clubs. The rise of the clubs around Ohio, voluntary associations, frequently outside the formal party apparatus that's governed by statute and elections and all that, has been a good move in the right direction. That's where we need to be, is reaching out in our communities, in our precinct level relationships, and getting people on board. So kudos to you. and your fellow leaders in that movement, because I think it's the right way to go.
Well, thank you for that. I appreciate that. So I wanted to ask, along the lines of when I mentioned about people coming in from out of state to collect signatures, do you see a path for any kind of legislation to prevent that from happening so that these initiatives that affect Ohio are being supported by Ohioans actually out there collecting those signatures rather than those outside interests?
Well, I have to tell you that uh, Republicans have been known to use out-of-state firms as well when they're circulating petitions. So you want to be careful that you uh, have a rule that works for both ways, both directions. Um, that's an interesting question, and I haven't um, done specific research on it. There's a right of association in the First Amendment that might create some issues with an actual prohibition, but I'm only identifying a question because nobody's asked me that before, and I haven't done any research on it.
Fair enough. I'm just exploring ideas too. I think everything should be equal and fair above board. And, just like we don't want people from outside of the United States coming in and trying to affect the national elections, we got to protect Ohio elections as well. And you are on the front lines, of course, on voter ID laws. And I know that you have rejected the Ohio Voters Bill of Rights, which would introduce automatic registration of voters, discard the recent additions of the voter identification requirements, and increase ballot drop boxes. And as I was doing the research, I saw they've submitted this several times and you've rejected it several times. What is going on with that now?
Well, I expect they will submit it again. We do have a Supreme Court case right now because they called it the Voter Bill of Rights, and it's not that. A Bill of Rights is something that gives individuals rights, right? I mean, that's freedom of speech, freedom of the press, for the right to a trial by jury. Those are individual rights. What this thing did, this amendment, is it completely rewrites our law for administering elections. It's a systemic re-engineering, and the title was just misleading. So I bounced it. I don't get to say, by the way, whether it's a good idea or a bad idea. My determination is completely: is it truthful and accurate? The summary of the petition language, and I just felt that this was misleading. And I told them so and rejected it, and they sued me. So we're in the Supreme Court, and we'll hear from the court pretty soon about what they think. The court doesn't seem to be in a hurry. They rejected a request by the other side to put this on the rocket docket and decide it quickly, which suggests to me that they don't think that this is nearly as important a question as the left-wing progressive lawfare artists that brought it.
It's very frustrating. It seems common sense with voter ID laws. If you have to have an ID to go see your doctor, to pick up a prescription, to buy alcohol or tobacco, uh, it doesn't make sense to me that it would be such a hardship to have one to show you can vote.
Yeah, I completely agree with that, and so do 80% of Americans. Look, if they somehow make it to the ballot, I will probably vote against it. Not probably, I will. The package of things there is can't possibly get through the democratic process in the legislature. So they're trying to dress it up as some pro-voter, equal rights kind of thing, when what it really is a recipe to uh, re-engineer the entire election system.
Yeah, it's infuriating, actually, to listen to the Biden administration and others on the Democrats talking about how we're trying to take away people's rights to vote. And we've gotten beyond that. We're not in the 50s and the 60s anymore. This is 2024. So we need to bring some good old fashioned common sense back into the play, I think. One other thing I want to talk to you about is what's going on with the gun laws. So I was very pleased to see that you filed a suit against the city of Columbus when they passed the new gun ordinances because they actually contradict current Ohio revised code. And as I was reading on your website, which I love how you post on your website what you're doing and why, and you explain it very well. Thank you for that. But
Oh, thank you.
it again, common sense to the same thing with the tobacco laws. In Hilliard, I can be on one side of the street and buy flavored tobacco, go across the street, and I can't. So here we have in Columbus, they passed these laws limiting how many bullets you could have and so forth. So tell us about that and where you are in the process.
Thank you. So, state law for years now has been that local cities, local governments don't have the authority in Ohio to pass their own rules for the same reason you're talking about. In Columbus, you could be in Delaware County, Ohio, be carrying a weapon and be in compliance with everything. Drive a couple hundred feet down Polaris Parkway and cross an imaginary line and suddenly be a criminal. That's the basis for the state law that says local governments don't get to do their own gun laws. The city of Columbus and the city of Cincinnati don't care. And they know they're not allowed to do this. They know they're going to lose these lawsuits. They're doing it solely for political reasons to, show, their voters that they're standing up to the big bad Republican government at the State House. And, candidly, I feel like it's an abuse of the system. But we will get right now, these laws are on hold. They've been what lawyers call stayed. So they're not in effect, even though they've been passed. Eventually, this will get up to the Supreme Court, and the Supreme Court will issue a decision. I'm confident, because this has been litigated before, that this state law is actually supreme in this area.
Well, what I find interesting is that before our new constitutional carry law went into effect, the argument from the left was crime is going to go up. But now we have the numbers that show, for example, the rate of gun crime in Parma fell by 22%. Now, we're only talking about gun crime. We're not talking about, car thefts and such like that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it fell in Toledo at 18%. So I thought it was kind of ironic that these numbers are disputing that, and it actually seems like what we have in place is working.
Yeah, so that study you're citing was done by my office in conjunction with Bowling Green University, and it looked at the gun crime for the year prior to constitutional carry and the year after it. Now, the left is howling that that's not true, and but the numbers don't lie. The numbers say exactly what you were just citing, and it might be too much to say that constitutional carry drove down the crime rate. I'm not sure that would be statistically valid, because crime rates did drop in places that didn't have constitutional carry passed at that time. But here's the thing: they're changing the argument. The thing that they said was crime rates are going to go through the roof. We're going to have blood in the streets. It's going to be, the Wild West. And they were wrong. So the study stands for the proposition that it tests their theory. And, we'll need some more time to go by for us to really measure whether there's actually a beneficial uh, effect of constitutional carry. The crime decreases. Uh, but we already kind of knew that concealed carry permit owners aren't the people committing crimes.
Exactly. They're the ones, it seems like, when criminals know that there's the potential that the house they're about to break into or the person they're about to mug may have a gun, it makes them think twice, I would hope.
Yeah, I just saw a story a few earlier today that the police in Toronto are there. There's been a 400% jump in home invasions for the purpose of getting a car. In other words, they break into your house to steal your car, and the police are saying, make sure you put the car keys near the front door so that they're less likely to come into your house and shoot you. Um, what a horrible advice. Here's the best way that you can live during crime that we can't do anything about. Something very upside down there.
Well, the criminal justice, no offense to you, but it seems like our whole criminal justice system is upside down right now. In Columbus, we've had the Kia boys who are stealing all the cars, and they're 12, 13, 14, 15 years old. They get arrested, they go to court, and the judge just lets them go. It's very frustrating as a citizen to see that happening. And I also see it, I don't know if they're calling it the restorative justice. I know they're doing that in schools, restorative justice, and it doesn't work because these kids need to understand actions have consequences. And if you're not even holding them accountable in school when they make bad choices, then they go out into the world and they're making those bad choices there and they're getting away with it. So aside from voting out the judges, which is, we know in Franklin County it has been very difficult to do, what else can we as citizens do?
Well, voting is the thing to do. Um, Look, those judges are voted in. They can be voted out, and I know that it's hard. But this is going back to the beginning of our conversation. We've got to go out and persuade. And we've got to go out and make the case. When enough people are tired of their cars being stolen and being carjacked and having their stuff stolen and people breaking into their house, when enough people are tired of the thugs that are out there shooting people and using guns to stick people up, we will see a change. I candidly am not super excited about um, a wholesale change to the juvenile court system. I think we need better judgment. The fact of the matter is, young boys in particular, their brains are not fully developed. They make bad decisions. Uh, and the juvenile court system is designed to try to sort out when you have a young felon in the making from when you've got a kid who is too stupid to make the right choice in a given situation. And in a lot of places in Ohio, that works out pretty well. In our big cities, the benches have largely been taken over by judges who have a critical theory view of the world. They see mercy in every case comes in front of them, and fail to recognize that even young people can have an evil heart, and that the society has a right to expect to be protected. I don't think that we need necessarily different laws, but we sure do need better judgment on the bench.
I want to pivot just a little bit because, you know, not everything you do is doom and gloom kind of things. And one thing I always wondered about was when the state sues a company for whatever reason, they did something wrong, and the state gets awarded funds. What happens to that money? And I saw on your website that with Family Dollar, there was a settlement reached, and you have allocated those funds for something wonderful. Tell us about that.
Well, thank you. At the high level, distribution of funds is largely controlled by statute. So, for example, if we sue somebody under environmental law and we win, the money is largely going to flow into um, the EPA or ODNR, depending on the kind of case it is, and that goes across the board. There's a lot of statutes that direct how that happens. The particular case you're talking about is the Dollar General and Family Dollar separate suits, but they were both doing the same thing. They were charging one price on the shelf, say a bottle of shampoo is $1. When you get up to the cash register, it's $2. And so it was basically a ripoff, whether it was inadvertent or not. And it's from people who can least afford it. If you're buying a shampoo at Family Dollar, you probably don't have a lot of extra money laying around. Um, and so when we won the case, the statute there gives me some discretion about using this to redress the wrong that was suffered by consumers. But because a lot of these things were $1 or $2 or $3, and who keeps? I mean, do you have a receipt from shopping from 3 months ago or a year ago? Probably not. So how do you find the people that got ripped off, and really how do you help them with the money? Because sending them a check for $3, it's going to cost me $17 to pay the administrator to process the paperwork and issue the check. So what we hit on was going to food banks in each county where there's a Dollar General or a Family Dollar, and sending the money to them. And every county got at least $5,000 to feed people that are hungry. It was. I've gotten a chance to visit maybe a half dozen of these food banks, meet some of the people that work there, meet some of the people that are using the food banks, and it was just wonderful to see justice coming out on a plate in a local dining room.
It's beautiful. I think it's absolutely beautiful, especially now with how expensive everything is. It, it's a little ray of sunshine. And I'm so thankful that not only are you protecting our legal rights, our constitutional rights, but you're being very wise with the money. And that is greatly appreciated. What other good things are you working on right now?
Oh my goodness, it's what we call a target-rich environment, because there's a lot of things that seem to be springing leaks at the moment. Uh, we just argued in the United States Supreme Court against overreach by the Biden administration on their ozone rule. We've also sued yesterday the SEC, which is this is the group that's supposed to regulate the stock market. Okay, I mean that's their job, is to make sure that it's a fair market, and they're making energy policy. They put this new rule out that is designed to push energy policy away from hydrocarbons and toward solar and wind, which is not the SEC's job. So we went to court and said, "You judge, make them stop." And on and on. Let me switch subjects
Yes, sure.
just a little bit, though. On the good news side, I'm really excited. We've been revamping police training in Ohio, trying to make sure that the people that are out there protecting us are getting trained every year, that we're funding it. And we're changing the way we're delivering it too. It used to be you had to go leave your city and or your job and go down to London, Ohio to get trained, which is, for a lot of places, is hours away. And
Right.
then you're down there a week. Somebody's got to cover your shift back at home, which means overtime. You don't see your family, blah, blah, blah. I mean, it was just a pretty crummy way to deliver service. We now have 5 regional campuses that we're training on across the state, partnering with community colleges and using facilities that are already there. This is making it a lot easier. Most of the officers are no more than 45 minutes from a regional campus, which means they can commute. If their police force needs them, they can even, you know, come back and, cover 3 or 4 hours of overtime if they need to. So that's cool, and we're introducing virtual reality training, which takes it out of the classroom, off the PowerPoint, and puts you right in the middle of a situation where things could go kinetic, and trains you on your decision making. Really excited about the this new horizon in police training, and it's putting Ohio at the leading edge in America for how to do it.
Well, that sounds very exciting and actually follows along with my motto of work smarter, not harder. My one question about that is this just for CBI, or is it for all law enforcement officers, local, sheriff, etc.?
All 31,000 law enforcement officers in Ohio are benefiting from this.
And is that free for them, or are they paid, or how does that work?
The General Assembly has appropriated, I believe it's $40 million to pay for this.
Oh, that's phenomenal. Utterly phenomenal. So that leads me to another question. We know that applications for becoming police officers is not where we need it to be. It's pretty much in the tank. So, what is being done to help encourage people to become police officers?
Well, part of that is local initiatives. The state, other than for the highway patrol and a few other very small groups, doesn't hire those 31,000. Those people are hired by local police departments and sheriff's offices. The key there is, I think, to watch what happens and what's working, and I think you'll see other agencies adopting that. But I'm going to tell you, so I'm going to get a little controversial here. People aren't going to like this, but the number one reason people don't want to be police officers right now is the politicians and the media.
It's true.
The media try to make it look like every police action that has a tough result, that the police were somehow at fault and not the bad guy that had the knife or the gun or was acting out or threatening people. The fact of the matter is, we investigate the most serious of these cases, and the vast majority of them, I'm talking above 90%, the police officers were doing the right thing, the legal thing, the heroic thing. And yet what we have is the media coming out and new questions emerged tonight about the recent shooting and it's somebody trying to get their 15 minutes of fame on TV, and it's awful, and we wonder why. And then on top of that, you got me going here, Lisa. On top of that, we get these politicians who are out there playing to the loudest, most radical, nasty elements in society, and questioning the police officers. Is it any wonder that a young man or woman thinking about their career choices, doesn't want to pick one where they're going to be on the mayor's next press conference being called a thug or a racist. It's time for politicians to learn how to quiet the waters, to calm the waters, not stir them up.
I couldn't have said that any better myself.
We ought to start with criminals, and we get this pounded into us over and over again. And well, we should. This is the American way. You're innocent until you're proven guilty. That's a legal presumption. So the worst dirtbag who's standing in court is presumed innocent until the jury votes him guilty.
And that's how it
We
should be.
ought to at least have a presumption of good faith, giving a benefit of the doubt to the police officer when they're forced to act on our behalf, to at least start with the idea that they acted in good faith. And if it turns out that it's one of the rare occasions where a cop acted badly, then they're like anybody else, they should be held accountable. But the fact of the matter is, we jump to conclusions about police officers, and or at least the news media does, that they would never jump to conclusions about somebody who is arrested and accused.
Right. And along those lines, here's a thought. When we have prosecutors who are refusing to prosecute, especially repeat offenders, what is the redress for that? Can they be held liable, say, if they let someone off, don't prosecute, and they go out and kill somebody? Can the victim's family have redress against the prosecutor?
That would depend on the actual facts, but the general answer is no. And you want it to be no. Look, a cop, a prosecutor, any person out there on the public payroll, they work for us. The reason they have a job and the reason we give them power is to make a decision on our behalf. So a police officer or a prosecutor has power to make decisions because we want them to make our community safe and just. I mean, you can make it safe by just putting everybody in prison for 20 years, regardless of how bad the crime was. But that's not justice. Um, we don't want to hamstring people. What we do need to do is voters need to start voting. If you've got a prosecutor who's not doing their job, vote the sucker out. That's what happened in San Francisco. They had that woke George Soros character out there wouldn't prosecute thefts at all. It wouldn't prosecute most other things, and crime just went through the roof. Not surprisingly, and the voters recalled him. We didn't even wait for the next election, and they threw him out. Uh, the people need to speak for themselves. We don't. The answer to every question is not a new law, and it's not putting somebody into prison. Sometimes it's making the system work. The government we have is the government we voted for. And to all my Republican friends out there, if you don't like what's going on in your community, get off your sofa, turn off the TV, and go out and knock on your neighbors' doors and say, "Hey, are you worried about this? Did you see this story? We've got somebody that's running that wants to clean up the courthouse. Can I give you this piece of information with their bio on it?" That's the way we change things.
I couldn't agree with you more. One last question. Is there any special policing effort being done with regards to the illegal immigrants that are here?
Well, obviously, the same kind of policing that applies to the rest of the community applies to them as well. But here's the thing: uh, the federal government, even when they've got a policy document that they're not going to deport people even when they're convicted of a felony. We went to court, and sued the Biden administration for this because there's actually a law passed by Congress that said you have to deport them if they're of a convicted felon, and they're just not doing it. The court said, well, you're not wrong, but you're the wrong people to bring it, and they dismissed our lawsuit. Uh, Here's what we've got to do about illegal immigration. We've got to elect Donald Trump this fall, because he's shown that he knows what to do about the border, and Joe Biden has shown that he doesn't. Joe Biden has turned Ohio. We border Canada. We're a border state with Mexico because of Biden's inaction and his abdication of his constitutional duty to faithfully execute the laws of the land. I couldn't be angrier about the deliberate nonfeasance out of the White House.
Yes, and Ohio is, even though we're not physically on the border, like you said, we've now become a border state, and it's not just the illegal immigrants, it's the drugs. We know we have a lot of drug cartels here in Ohio. Our interstate system gives them easy access, and then we also have the human trafficking going on. And I realized I looked up on your website that there's new training that's going to help healthcare professionals to identify victims of human trafficking. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
So, Mercy System helped with us, Mount Carmel, develop this. But look, one of the places, the problem with human trafficking is that it happens in the shadows. And the survivors of trafficking frequently don't come into contact with very many people that can help them. They're not hanging around police stations and social workers' offices.
Right.
So, how do you find something that happens in the shadows? We've been reaching out to the places where it, you actually will see things if you know what you're looking for. So, hotels, we train hotel people uh, what to look for when people are coming in. You see a man coming in with a woman and no luggage, and it looks like he's controlling her. Um, might be perfectly fine, but it might be human trafficking. Same with the trucking industry. And one of the other things that happens, sadly, with the survivors of human trafficking is they get hurt, injured, either by their trafficker or by the men who are buying the women for sex. And so reaching out to and training, particularly emergency workers, but all hospital caregivers, gives us a further set of eyes and ears that can say, I'm not sure this is right. And they can reach out, call local law enforcement, call the human trafficking hotline, whatever, and say, please look into this. I'm not sure this is right. And they don't have to be right. That's the thing. It's okay to see something and say something, and it turns out to be nothing. Well, breathe a sigh of relief. At least you stood up and did something. But what happens if you decide, well, I'm not sure that that's what this is, and you say nothing, and it turns up later that that human trafficking survivor is the latest news story about a woman killed? How are you going to feel? So we're very excited about working with our hospital partners, and what we urge everybody is if you see something that makes you go, huh, that you're not sure about, say something about it.
I can't thank you enough. You are a perfect example of what this country needs, which is to be proactive instead of reactive. And it sounds like you have so many good things happening at the State House. It's been truly a pleasure to talk to you today, Attorney General Dave Yost. Thank you for being here. Real quick, is there anything else you want to tell our listeners?
Well, I have to say one last thing other than thank you, which is all of this stuff. You would think that I worked 80 hours a week. And even if I did work 80 hours a week, sometimes I do, I couldn't possibly do all the things we've talked about. My gratitude and the credit really goes to the great men and women who work in the Ohio Attorney General's office. Every one of them could be making more money in the private sector. They work for the Ohio Attorney General because they want to put on the white hat when they go to work in the morning. They want to fight for truth, justice, and the American way. And if that embarrasses anybody to hear me say that, you probably want to vote for the other guy because I'm not embarrassed by it at all.
Thank you, Attorney General Dave Yost. This has been Straight Shot Politics.